if you had to think about countries to be in when global warming hits, America's probably the second last place I'd be.
Where's the first?
You
Have a
beat me to
guess.
that. Oh, let's think.
London. You guys live there.
London.
Why?
Or the UK. Yeah.
Nah, I'm thinking London is an island. They're gonna run out of food. They're a mess.
Yeah, well, 40% of the UK's food is imported. So when a food crisis strikes, and I don't mean if, I mean when.
Oh no, so you mean London is the worst place?
The worst place.
Oh yeah, we were asking what's the best place.
Where's the best place?
Yeah.
No, but I think that's more interesting.
But yeah, all right, yeah.
terms
Actually,
of-
tell us why London is worst
Well,
first.
because for a start, you import 40% of your food. It's food. You know? When a famine strikes, then the UK is one of the countries which will not be able to, can't support its own population on its own merits and won't be able to import either. So at that point, I think global warming will get interesting.
But don't many people say that the global south would be more dramatically impacted by
Global South, if you're living in a third world country, you're much closer to the rural
True.
than you are in the Western country.
Very true.
And you are likely to have some rural skills as well, relatively speaking. So I think third world countries, they're going to be more hit by the temperature changes, and certainly they can be hit by drought and effects like that with changes in climatic patterns. But in terms of the skills of a person, like I've got friends in Uganda, for example, and they are teaching people how to farm. So if anything goes wrong, it's a much more rural society than we are. There's more chance to survive just because you have the rural. I think the biggest ones to suffer are going to be urban people in the northern hemisphere.
That's very interesting. And I used to have this conversation with an old mate of mine.
Oh, yeah.
Because he said, listen, us in the cities, we don't actually have real skills. And he made a comparison. Have you seen that video of there's these tribesmen? They're in Africa somewhere.
Yeah.
And they walk together to sort of steal food from a lion and its family.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that when they all march together? And they've developed these ways of taking food from a lion just from years.
From lions.
Yeah, from lions. So a lion has let's say a lion, they've killed a zebra and they're eating it. Apparently, if human beings, if you get 20, 30, a tribe of us, we all march towards the lion and we're confident.
The lion will
brave.
back off.
The lions are terrified because they're like, what is this?
They've had 300,000 years of experience us as hunters.
But that, exactly, and that's like true. Well, I'm not saying our knowledge here isn't true, but that's like they have this relationship with the animals, with
land,
nature, with plants, and you can't take that away. With us, all of our knowledge is based around being in a city. Like civilizations do collapse, and once they collapse, what do you know? How do you get food?
Nothing.
How do you get water?
I know nothing. I mean,
shelter?
I know I'm useless for that. I've got a couple of friends. One guy I'm thinking of particular lives in Tasmania in Australia. He was an American guy. He was country bloke. He went hunting. He'd go hunting and get venison and stuff like that. Now he hunts in Tasmania. He's taught his daughters how to hunt. So his attitude is, my kids have got the skills to survive when things go completely awry. Whereas the vast majority of people in the West don't have those hunting skills, and even Americans with all their guns, they're good at shooting at each other. Don't know how good they're going to be shooting at a cougar and stuff like that. And so the capacity to interact with the land is greater in third world countries than it is in the West. So I think the West is going to be the one that gets the wake-up call.
So where would be the best place to be?
Well, in terms of developed societies, I'd go for China. China is not food self-sufficient, but one big project that's involved right now is trying to convert a massive area of desert into agricultural land, which involves a huge amount, giant infrastructure projects to get water from other parts of China to that area of land. If they can do it, they'll double their arable land.
I think they're doing also a lot of weather transformation or doing things with the weather to see how they can.
Well, I think we have the weather modification. That's getting caught up in conspiracy theories, so I won't go too far there.
Oh, really? That's not real.
Huh?
I saw somewhere that China was working on that even at universities they are offering such courses to learn how to, weather modifications. But is that not?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole without looking at some research on it. But like what they are doing is trying to make themselves more resilient as a society. So like China's carbon dioxide, or China's coal consumption is falling now because they've finally built enough solar and other. They've got the world's first functional thorium molten salt reactor. So once they've cracked that, they'll be pumping them out they'll have a factory making them, or factories making them. So they've got a better potential to break away from fossil fuels than any other country on the planet. They make 90% of the world's solar panels are made in China. Whether they're sustainable in the long term, and I've got colleagues who argue that we don't have enough minerals to maintain them, but that's a debate I'm not going to get into. But in terms of having alternative energy systems, building up local food resilience, and having the skill level to survive as a culture on its own, I think China is probably the most sustainable society on the planet. Given what I think is coming our way.
What about given their population? They have a massive population to sustain.
1.4 billion. That's part of the issue. I mean, it's gigantic, and the land area is reasonably big as well. It's not the most densely populated place on the planet, but it is huge. So yeah, they've got enormous issues about holding it all together. But again, because they have this culture that emphasizes collective, that it went too far with Mao, obviously. But there's an element to which the Chinese people know that the reason they've been successful is because they are Chinese people. Okay? It's not just individual Chinese. Americans think, I did this, therefore I'm a genius, and I did it all on my own and nobody else helped me, yada, yada, yada. No Chinese person is quite that stupid. So there's more of a recognition of the reliance upon a culture that America gives, but also they're run by engineers. So all the projects they're putting together, the debates they have over which engineering projects to undertake and how to do them, not whether you should do it market-based or government. We're caught up in crazy ideological fights. We call that politics. The Chinese are much more in so what do we wish to achieve? How do we achieve it? Those sorts of debates occur. But they actually build the infrastructure. So in terms of having the infrastructure to hold a giant society like that together, that's one reason they built those high-speed rail, which is the whole. I mean, there was only a handful of them when I was last in China, and it was 2016, I think. Haven't been back. They've built most of that. I want to go there and just experience the railways, let alone the rest of it. So in terms of a society which can hold together, I think I'd give China a chance, more Asian countries than European. The Netherlands is not a bad country on that front. You know that Netherlands is the world's second largest food exporter.
They have those greenhouses, which they...
a massive greenhouse-based food production, which uses carbon dioxide. There's all sorts of elements to it that are, problematic. They rely upon fossil fuels to do that. So there are question marks. But if any society has got a huge buffer of food producing capability to survive what might go wrong, the Netherlands has it. The UK, anything but. So like China, if I had to say the part of human civilization that I'm pretty much sure will survive, and again, I could be making a wrong extrapolation here, but it's Papua New Guinea.
Why?
Because in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, there's over 200 valleys. They're highlands, so they're high altitude. They're not copying the incredible increase in temperature at the sea level. Everybody, not everybody, but people it's hunting and gathering society with a whole range of other elements these days. But they're, again, the same thing you were saying about Africans and being able to confront a lion, you don't need to worry about it in Papua New Guinea. But being capable of providing your own food and being able to survive without any other group, I think the Papua New Guinea Highlanders have got an advantage. And then maybe New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand is so isolated, but all the billionaires are trying to build bunkers down there right now. Australia, moderately so, but Australia is, again, it's got the worst elements of America in terms of its lack of interest in developing its own productive resources. It's got too many neoclassical economists. So for example, it doesn't produce cars anymore. Okay? It doesn't have a tooling industry. So if you do have a breakdown in exports from other parts of the world, then Australia just lacks the productive capability to do anything about it. New Zealand, which is a population of about 5 million, ranks higher on what's called the Atlas of Economic Complexity, which gives you the range of products that country can produce, ranks higher than Australia with 6 times the population. So New Zealand maybe, but yeah, it's you've got to have both this cohesiveness to society so it won't fall apart at the first level of pressure. That writes America off. And you've got to have food capabilities, which makes China probably, given what they're doing, probably viable. But yeah, to me, it's, you know, I have a serious doubt that civilization will make it to 2050.
Wow. But then with China, do you think that can sustain itself, this authoritarian rule? Because isn't that the argument as to why democracy is superior? It's because...
How authoritarian is it?
That's what I'm actually, I'm trying to work out. And there seems to be some level of compliance as well.
There was absolute authoritarianism under Mao. And like I experienced that when I went there in 81, 82. And Maoism was over. Deng Xiaoping had taken over, but people still had to protect their asses all the time. So any question you asked, the first answer was, I followed the directives of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. I'm not joking. That happened at every bloody question we asked in public forums. So you're protecting your ass. You can't be criticised if you've done exactly what you were told to do. So that element was there. But that was all because the craziness of the political and economic system under Mao. So there was still very much a rural society, agrarian society, and most of the fights at the Politburo level were over people who were in favour of grain production versus those in favour of protein, legumes versus grain. And they would to and fro over those issues and never developed decent industrialization. It was a mess. Under Deng Xiaoping, because they've had this focus upon raising the level of the country, it's been so successful that people expect a huge increase in their per capita income, living standards, on a decade level basis, and they're getting it. And then to get into the Communist Party, which is huge. And I think the Communist Party has 50 million members.
Yes, I think it's I don't know the facts.
Yeah, but it ends up being a sort of, not a good form, not the best form, but a perverted form of what the Athenians had, because we all think about Athenian democracy. Most Athenian democracy was not based on elections, but based on what they call sortition. So with sortition, it was a random number generator. Okay? You'd ask, many positions were filled by a process of saying who do you think should fill the position to leading people in society. Now, if you ask Donald Trump who should fill a position, he's going to nominate his daughter. Okay, but it was, once you nominated the next level was then asked, and the level after that, and the level after that. So there were several stages, which meant that nobody thought they could actually influence what the final decision was. So you'd select somebody you thought was intelligent and capable, and then they would suggest somebody else they thought was intelligent and capable, and so on. So you got a level of disinterest, self-disinterest in the people who are selected for leading positions in the society. Now, the Chinese Communist Party, you've got to suck up to the person above you to some extent. You've got to conform to the ideology, but the ideology has been far more flexible than Western ideology has been. You've got to have training in STEM, largely speaking. Most of the people in the Communist Party, like Z apparently was a chemical engineer. Okay? So there's something about it that means you select people of high skill and high intelligence. Now that kills what we're doing in the West. So in that sense, it's authoritarian in the sense you don't have two sides of politics having ideological slanging matches. You don't have Farage on one side and Jeremy Corbyn on the other. You've got a bunch of engineers saying, how do we build this program? what's going to develop our country more effectively. What threats do we face, do we think, in the future? How can we work on them? And that gives you an engineering, get things done attitude. And the consequence for the average person is they're let free to do what they want within the level of economic activity the country is currently capable of. And yeah, it's like I saw figures on this just recently and it blew me away. The rate of per capita income growth in America from 1960 to now is about 1.7% per annum, which is not bad because it's skewed massively towards the wealthy. The wealthy got most of that per capita increase. But that means over a period of 40 years, roughly, you'll double your per capita income. China's rate of growth is 9% per annum, which means in a decade, you'll more than double per capita income. Now, that means you can actually see the improvement in your own lifetime. So somebody, and I've got my ex-girlfriend from China, she's in her late 50s, I think now. She was born during the Mao days, and one way she got herself a bit of status was by harvesting a lot of grass for some animals and got a reward for it. She actually stacked the box full of stones to make it look like it weighed more. Okay, that sort of shit. Okay.
The old trick.
Genius.
Okay, that sort of trick. But like in her lifetime, so she's say 50 or 60, roughly. I'm guessing now, but she had seen her standard of living has risen by 2 to the power of 6, 32 times better off, in effect, than she was when she was